Modern society considers it a brutal tragedy if the internet drops for 10 seconds or a package delivery is delayed by a single afternoon. Centuries ago, a proper morning routine meant scraping rat droppings off the breakfast bread and thanking the heavens for the extra protein. That built character. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you probably love bragging about how you survived drinking water straight from the garden hose and riding your bike without a helmet. Congratulations, you're tough. But let me burst your bubble. Compared to your ancestors, you are a delicate, pampered indoor plant. We all think we'd love to time travel to the Wild West or the Victorian era. We picture John Wayne riding heroically into town, or elegant ladies dancing at a royal ball. Spoiler alert, you wouldn't survive 10 minutes in the past, and it's not the outlaws, the sword fights, or the bears that would take you out, it's the smell. The smell alone would drop you faster than a Mike Tyson uppercut. Today, we are exposing 30 completely disgusting hygiene facts from the past that will make you want to go hug your modern flushing toilet. Let's get started. Fact 1. Corn cobs instead of Charmin. If you ever watch a classic Western, you probably imagine a life of rugged freedom on the open plains. But let's talk about the harsh reality of the frontier outhouse. Before modern toilet paper existed, American pioneers and cowboys had to make do with what nature provided, and nature provided dried, incredibly scratchy corn cobs. You would eat your dinner and then literally use the leftovers to take care of business. By the late 1800s, the Sears Roebuck catalog became the most popular item in the outhouse. Folks would read it, then rip out a page to wipe. It worked perfectly until Sears foolishly decided to print on glossy paper, leading to thousands of angry letters from farmers whose morning routines were completely ruined. Fact 2. The exploding toilets of London. We think of the Victorian era as a time of fancy top hats, proper etiquette, and afternoon tea. But underneath those beautiful cobblestone streets, London was a literal ticking time bomb. Houses didn't have plumbing. They had cesspools dug directly under the basement floor to collect human waste. Since landlords were too cheap to pay the night soil men to empty them out, the waste would just sit there and ferment for years. Eventually, the massive buildup of methane gas from the human waste would ignite. It wasn't uncommon for a Victorian family to be sitting down to a lovely roast beef dinner, only for the floorboards to violently explode, covering their entire dining room in a completely unmentionable mess. Fact 3. The Roman xylospongium. The ancient Romans were famous for their advanced aqueducts and massive public bathhouses, making them seem pretty civilized. But their public restrooms were an absolute nightmare for anyone who values personal space. Men would sit side by side on long stone benches with holes in them, discussing politics and weather. But there was no toilet paper. Instead, they had a xylospongium, which was literally a sea sponge attached to a wooden stick. And here is the kicker. It was a community sponge. When you were done, you simply rinsed the dirty sponge in a shallow gutter of running salt water at your feet, and then handed the wet stick directly to the guy sitting next to you. Talk about a team-building exercise. Fact 4. The dreaded cry of Gardyloo. If you ever manage to invent a time machine and visit medieval Europe, never look up with your mouth open. People living in multi-story city buildings didn't have indoor plumbing, so they used chamber pots right in their bedrooms. When the pot got full, nobody wanted to walk down 4 flights of stairs to empty it. Instead, they simply opened their window and chucked the entire contents right into the street below. In places like Scotland, the law required them to yell the phrase, "Gardyloo!" before throwing the waste. This was a corrupted French phrase basically meaning, "Watch out for the water." If you heard that yell and didn't immediately sprint for cover, your expensive velvet cloak was getting entirely ruined. Fact 5. Fairy tale moats of sewage. When we visit Europe today or watch a Disney movie, we see these gorgeous medieval castles surrounded by romantic, sparkling moats. We assume the water was put there as a beautiful defensive barrier to keep enemy armies away. Well, it definitely kept people away, but mostly because of the smell. The moat was actually the castle's open-air sewer system. The toilets in a castle, known as garderobes, were just holes carved into the stone floors jutting out over the outer walls. Everything dropped directly into the stagnant moat below. Decades of royal waste would just float there in the sun. And the most horrifying part? During a heavy siege, desperate soldiers would sometimes have to catch and eat fish out of that exact same water. Fact 6. The groom of the stool. Climbing the corporate ladder today usually involves sitting through boring meetings or dealing with passive-aggressive emails from human resources. But during the reign of King Henry VIII, the most prestigious job in the entire kingdom was called the groom of the stool. This lucky aristocrat had the exclusive, highly sought-after honor of following the king into his private chambers, handing him a royal towel, and literally wiping the king's backside after he used his velvet-lined toilet box. It sounds like the worst job in history, but because this man had the king's ear in total privacy every single day, he held immense political power. Men literally fought tooth and nail for the right to handle the monarch's dirty laundry. Fact 7. Chemical burns for cleanliness. Today, people will throw an absolute fit if their expensive artisanal body wash doesn't have the right amount of organic aloe vera to moisturize their delicate skin. But for centuries, our ancestors didn't have the luxury of gentle foaming cleansers. They had to make their own soap from scratch, using two incredibly harsh ingredients: leftover rendered animal fat from cooking and lye extracted from wood ashes. Making this soap was an exact science, and if a pioneer mother messed up the ratio even slightly, the resulting bar of soap became highly caustic. Instead of gently washing away the dirt, scrubbing your body with a bad batch of lye soap would literally give you severe chemical burns, stripping away the top layer of your skin along with the grime. Talk about an aggressive exfoliating routine. Fact 8. The medical fear of hot baths. If you think teenage boys today are bad at taking showers, you should have seen the Renaissance. During the spread of the bubonic plague, the top medical minds of Europe confidently declared that bathing in hot water was basically a death sentence. Doctors believed that warm water opened up your pores, allowing the deadly plague vapors floating in the air to slip directly into your bloodstream. For over 100 years, the smartest, wealthiest people on the planet actively avoided water like it was acid. Queen Isabella of Spain proudly bragged that she had only bathed twice in her entire life: on the day she was born and on the day she got married. The smell of a royal court must have been weapons grade. Fact 9. Changing shirts instead of showering. By the Victorian era, wealthy people still didn't trust full-body baths, but they desperately wanted to feel clean. So, they invented a completely nonsensical scientific theory. They believed that clean, white linen had magical absorbent properties. The logic was that if you wore a crisp, white linen shirt pressed tightly against your skin, the fabric would act like a sponge and literally suck the sweat and dirt right out of your pores. Rich gentlemen would change their linen shirts 3 or 4 times a day, honestly believing this was the equivalent of taking a hot, soapy shower. They might look incredibly dapper in their expensive suits, but underneath those layers, they hadn't seen soap in 6 months. Fact 10. The stinking Palace of Versailles. King Louis XIV of France built the Palace of Versailles to be the most breathtaking, opulent building on earth, filled with gold, mirrors, and priceless art. But he completely forgot to install any functioning toilets. When thousands of aristocrats attended his legendary all-night parties, they ate and drank massive amounts of wine. When nature called, they didn't have bathrooms to use. Guests would simply step behind heavy velvet curtains, squat on the grand marble staircases, or sneak into the royal gardens to relieve themselves. The palace smelled so overwhelmingly like a public outhouse that servants had to burn heavy incense constantly, and aristocrats practically bathed in strong perfume just to avoid gagging in the hallways. People today complain about a crowded elevator and buy scented candles that smell like vanilla. Hundreds of years ago, the absolute peak of luxury was simply standing upwind of an open sewer so a person wouldn't gag on their own wedding day. A dirty curtain was a five-star resort. Fact 11. Urine as laundry detergent. Doing laundry today is as easy as tossing a brightly colored pod into a machine. But in ancient Rome, doing the laundry was a biohazard. The Romans wore large, heavy, white wool togas that stained easily. To keep them looking bright, they utilized the power of ammonia. And where did they get free ammonia? From human urine. The Romans set up large clay pots on street corners, encouraging men to relieve themselves into the jars. The laundry workers, called fulones, would collect the stale, fermented urine, pour it into massive vats with the dirty togas, and then stand barefoot in the vats, stomping on the clothes for hours to break down the grease and dirt. Sure, your toga was white, but you definitely didn't want to get caught in the rain. Fact 12. Rotting floor rushes. If you think your living room carpet needs a good vacuuming, be thankful you don't live in a Tudor-era English home. Instead of rugs, people covered their dirt or stone floors with a thick layer of woven reeds and rushes to insulate the room against the freezing cold. But they rarely ever cleaned it out completely. When the top layer got dirty, they just threw fresh rushes directly over the old ones. The bottom layers would sit there for decades, rotting away and collecting a terrifying mixture of spilled beer, food scraps, spit, vomit, and whatever the hunting dogs dragged in. Walking across the living room sounded like squishing through a wet swamp, and the smell was enough to knock a buzzard off a garbage truck. Fact 13. George Washington's real teeth. Every American schoolchild is taught the charming myth that George Washington, the father of our country, had a set of wooden teeth. It makes him sound folksy and resourceful. The truth is much darker and incredibly disturbing. Washington suffered from horrible dental hygiene and lost almost all of his teeth by his 20s. His custom-made dentures were actually a horrifying contraption made of heavy lead, carved elephant ivory, teeth pulled from cows and horses, and, yes, actual human teeth. Historical records show he purchased these real human teeth directly from his own enslaved workers. So, the next time you look at a dollar bill, just remember the absolute nightmare of a jaw hanging out behind those lips. Fact 14. Spanish urine mouthwash. Since we are on the topic of terrifying dental hygiene, let's go back to ancient Rome. The Romans were incredibly vain and wanted bright white smiles, but crest whitening strips hadn't been invented yet. They realized that the ammonia in urine was fantastic at bleaching teeth, but they were also total snobs about it. The wealthy Roman elites believed that the urine produced by the people in Spain was somehow much stronger and higher quality than local Italian urine. So, they literally imported heavy jugs of Spanish urine across the ocean at great expense, just so the wealthiest patricians could proudly swish it around their mouths every morning. Try explaining that flavor profile to your modern dental hygienist. Fact 15. The infamous Waterloo teeth. In the early 19th century, sugary treats became popular, leading to a massive epidemic of rotting teeth among the wealthy. Rich people needed dentures, but the ivory ones turned yellow and smelled like death. They wanted real human teeth, but supply was low. That all changed in 1815 at the Battle of Waterloo, where over 50,000 young, healthy soldiers were slaughtered. Before the bodies were even cold, massive gangs of scavengers rushed the battlefield with pliers, ripping the front teeth out of the dead soldiers. These teeth were shipped back to England by the barrel, boiled, and sold to wealthy aristocrats at premium prices. If you had a nice smile in the 1820s, you were probably wearing a dead infantryman's teeth. Fact 16. Black teeth as a status symbol. Speaking of sugar, when it was first imported to Europe during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, it was so incredibly expensive that only royalty could afford it. The Queen loved sugar so much, she put it in everything, causing her teeth to rot entirely black. But because she was the ultimate fashion icon, having a mouthful of black rotting teeth suddenly became the ultimate flex of wealth and high society. It meant you were rich enough to afford imported sugar. Poor people, not wanting to look broke, actually started taking chunks of charcoal from their fireplaces and deliberately coloring their healthy teeth black just to look like they had money. It was the 16th century equivalent of buying a fake Rolex. Fact 17. Mouse brain toothpaste. Before the invention of smooth, minty fluoride pastes, our ancestors had to get incredibly creative with their oral care, usually resulting in a recipe straight out of a witch's cauldron. In ancient Rome and Greece, one of the most highly recommended formulas for a sparkling smile involved catching mice, burning their heads to a fine crisp, and mixing the ashes with ground-up rabbit heads, pumice stone, and honey. You would take this gritty, horrifying paste and scrub it onto your teeth with a rough linen rag. It probably did scrape the plaque off, but it also completely destroyed your tooth enamel in the process, ensuring you'd be buying a pair of those Waterloo dentures by the time you turned 30. Fact 18. A dead mouse for a toothache. If you did manage to ruin your teeth, going to the dentist wasn't an option, because dentists didn't exist. The local blacksmith would just pull your tooth out with dirty iron pliers while a couple of large men held you down to the chair. But if you wanted a home remedy to stop a throbbing toothache, ancient Egyptian and medieval medicine had a solution that would send modern health inspectors into a coma. The standard medical advice was to find a dead mouse, slice it in half, and press the raw, warm intestines directly against your infected, throbbing gums. They believed the dead mouse would somehow draw the evil spirits out of the tooth. Instead, it usually just delivered a fatal dose of septic shock. Fact 19. Deadly lead makeup. Having a glowing tan is popular today, but for centuries having pale, snow-white skin was the only way to prove you were an aristocrat who didn't have to work outside in the sun. To achieve this ghostly complexion, women in the 16th and 17th centuries thickly coated their faces with Venetian ceruse. This highly sought-after cosmetic was made from vinegar mixed with pure white lead. It looked beautiful for a week, but the lead slowly absorbed into their bloodstream, causing their hair to fall out, their teeth to rot, and their skin to turn gray and pockmarked. To cover up the hideous chemical burns, these women would just pile on an even thicker layer of the poisonous lead, slowly killing themselves for fashion. Fact 20. Furry mouse eyebrows. The 1800s were a rough time for personal grooming. Due to the widespread use of toxic lead cosmetics and a massive epidemic of syphilis sweeping through the upper classes, many wealthy socialites lost all of their hair, including their eyebrows. But you couldn't just draw them back on with a pencil. To maintain their beauty, high society women would visit a merchant, purchase the skin of a furry mouse, cut out little crescent shapes, and glue the hairy mouse pelts directly to their foreheads using an adhesive made from boiled fish bladders. If a woman stood too close to the fireplace at a crowded ball, the glue would melt, and her mouse eyebrows would slide right down her cheeks in front of everyone. 2 hours in front of a mirror applying expensive moisturizers? Bah! True beauty used to require smearing pure toxic lead on a face and gluing dead rodents to a forehead. It separated the weak from the truly fashionable. Fact 21. The giant, greasy mousetrap wigs. During the late 1700s, Marie Antoinette popularized towering, gigantic wigs for women. To keep these massive, powdered hairstyles standing upright, hairdressers slathered the hair frames in heavy animal fat and thick starch. Because taking the wig apart took hours, women slept sitting upright with the rancid fat still plastered to their heads. The smell was so undeniably atrocious that popular newspapers of the era published satirical cartoons warning women that mice would burrow into their hair to build nests. The craziest part? The public completely believed it was true. And while a mouse might not have actually lived on a woman's moving head, that rotting animal fat absolutely attracted hungry, disease-ridden rodents directly to their pillows every single night. Fact 22. Elegant lice scratchers. Because these massive wigs were never washed and were essentially glued to the scalp with old fat, They became breeding grounds for entire civilizations of head lice. The itching must have been absolutely maddening, but a proper lady couldn't just reach up and aggressively scratch her head in the middle of a high society ball. To solve this problem without ruining their elaborate hair, women carried long, beautifully carved sticks made of ivory, gold, or silver. They would discreetly slide the stick deep into the center of the wig and aggressively scratch the bugs on their scalp while maintaining direct eye contact and a polite conversation with the Duke of Wellington. True elegance is hiding a parasite colony under a diamond tiara. Fact 23. Arsenic for a rosy complexion. Victorian women were under immense pressure to look delicate, fragile, and slightly ill, because appearing overly robust was considered a sign of working-class vulgarity. To achieve that sickly, translucent glow and a bright sparkle in their eyes, they didn't just use makeup. They went straight to the poison cabinet. Women would routinely consume small wafers made from arsenic. Yes, the same chemical compound we use to kill rats in the basement. The arsenic worked by destroying their red blood cells, giving them the pale, ghostly pallor they desired, while slowly destroying their internal organs. Many women died of mysterious, wasting diseases, completely unaware that their morning beauty snack was sending them to an early grave. Fact 24. Belladonna eye drops. If eating rat poison wasn't enough, Victorian ladies also wanted huge, doe-like eyes, which they believed made them look innocent and emotionally sensitive. To achieve this, they created eye drops out of a plant called deadly nightshade, also known as belladonna. The active toxins in the plant would paralyze the muscles in the eye, forcing the pupils to dilate massively. It looked incredibly striking at a candlelight dinner, but the side effects were catastrophic. Continuous use of belladonna drops caused severe visual distortion, heart palpitations, and eventual permanent blindness. Imagine voluntarily blinding yourself just so the handsome guy across the ballroom thinks you look emotionally vulnerable. Hollywood romance movies conveniently leave that part out. Fact 25. Surgeons who refused to wash. Today, a hospital operating room is the cleanest place on earth, but before the 1850s, visiting a doctor was a game of Russian roulette. The concept of microscopic germs didn't exist. Doctors believed diseases were caused by bad smells. A top-tier surgeon would spend the morning in the morgue, digging around inside a putrid, rotting corpse with his bare hands to study anatomy. Then, without even wiping his hands, he would walk directly down the hall to the maternity ward and deliver a newborn baby. When a doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis finally suggested that maybe doctors should wash their hands with soap between patients, the medical community laughed him out of the profession, insulted that he called them dirty. Fact 26. The Saloon Community Cup. Let's go back to the American Wild West. After a long day of driving cattle through the dust, cowboys would hit the local saloon to quench their thirst, but glassware was incredibly expensive and hard to ship across the frontier. Instead of giving everyone a clean glass, the bartender usually had one single, large tin cup chained to the water barrel or whiskey keg. Every single person in the bar, from the guy coughing up blood in the corner to the outlaw who hadn't brushed his teeth in a decade, would drink deeply from that exact same cup. Sharing a drink in a Western saloon wasn't an act of brotherhood. It was a highly efficient distribution system for tuberculosis, cholera, and syphilis. Fact 27. Cow manure on open wounds. If you got injured in the Middle Ages, you better hope you died instantly, because the battlefield medics were coming for you. Without antibiotics or sterilized bandages, stopping a massive bleeding wound required desperate measures. One of the most common medical practices was to grab whatever was laying around the farm to pack the wound. This often meant stuffing a gaping sword gash full of dirty cobwebs pulled from the corner of a barn, or worse, packing the open wound with warm, fresh cow manure. They believed the heat and texture of the dung would stop the bleeding and draw out infections. Instead, it practically guaranteed the patient would suffer a horrific, agonizing death from tetanus and massive blood poisoning. Fact 28. The leech craze. In the early 19th century, the medical world went absolutely insane for leeches. Doctors believed that every illness, from a common headache to severe obesity, was caused by having too much blood in the body. Pharmacies across Europe and the United States were selling tens of millions of live leeches every single year. But leeches were expensive, so doctors reused them. A doctor would apply a leech to a patient dying of a highly contagious blood disease, wait for the worm to get fat, squeeze the blood out of it, and then slap that exact same hungry leech onto the face of a healthy person who just came in complaining of a mild earache. It was an absolute biological disaster. Fact 29. Bedbugs were just roommates. Today, if we find a single bedbug in a hotel room, we burn our luggage and demand a full refund. But for hundreds of years, bedbug infestations were so unbelievably common that people just accepted them as a normal part of life. You couldn't call an exterminator. Instead, Victorian families would literally place the 4 wooden legs of their beds into shallow bowls filled with kerosene or toxic oils, hoping the bugs wouldn't swim across the moat to climb up the posts. As for the thousands of bugs already living inside the mattress, people just went to sleep and accepted that they were going to be eaten alive every night. It was just the price you paid for taking a nap. Fact 30. Reusable rags. Modern feminine hygiene products are a relatively new invention, and women before the 20th century had to deal with their monthly cycles using methods that would make modern women run screaming. There were no disposable pads or tampons. Instead, women used old, worn-out scraps of cloth or thick flannel rags. They would fold them up, pin them to special heavy belts worn under their corsets, and go about their grueling daily chores. After use, these rags were hand-washed in a bucket, hung over the fireplace to dry in front of the whole family, and reused for years and years until they practically fell apart. Let's all take a moment of silence to appreciate the brilliant inventor of the disposable sanitary pad. You call these facts a nightmare? That was just a standard Tuesday. History wasn't a fairy tale. It was a biological hazard. Take away the hand sanitizer and the flushing toilets, and the modern world wouldn't last 48 hours. Be grateful for your indoor plumbing. Well, there you have it. 30 completely disgusting, historically accurate reasons to be eternally grateful that you live in an era with hot water heaters, minty toothpaste, and doctors who actually wash their hands. The next time you find yourself complaining about a mildly unpleasant public restroom, just remember that Victorian ladies were actively poisoning themselves with arsenic for fun. If you survived this video without losing your lunch, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which fact made you gag the most. We love reading your reactions. And listen closely. If you want even more deep dives into the bizarre, twisted, and shocking side of history, make sure to click the link in the description and subscribe to our main channel right now. We have a ton of incredible content waiting for you over there. Until next time, stay clean, folks.